Welcome to Straight to Why, where we uncover the why behind the people, companies, and ideas transforming our world. I'm your host, Amanda Hindlian. Today's guest is near and dear to my heart. It's Josh Machiz, Chief Marketing Officer at Lightspeed Venture Partners, one of the world's leading venture capital firms, and an investor in many of the companies shaping the future of AI, enterprise software, and consumer tech. But Josh is a storyteller, which is one of the things I love about having him on the show today. Josh has actually built his career at the intersection of storytelling, technology, and entrepreneurship. Before joining Lightspeed, he was a partner at Redpoint Ventures, where he helped redefine how venture firms support founders through content, community, and strategic communications, becoming even more important in today's world. And you are the co-host of your own podcast now called Lightwork. I am very excited to talk about that. Prior to venture, Josh, you spent more than a decade at NASDAQ. You helped hundreds of private companies prepare for public markets.
I know, we both did that.
We both did that.
Very competitive space, and I can't wait to get into it.
You really helped build NASDAQ's social presence, and you did a beautiful job.
From the ground up.
You were the first. So I want to talk about that and what it takes to create that kind of digital brand. But thank you, Josh, for joining us on Straight to Why for a winding introduction, but one that tees us up for an amazing conversation about storytelling, entrepreneurship, to emerging technologies, and all of the amazing things that you're creating.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda. I'm so thrilled to be on your show.
Are you kidding me? It's my pleasure. You have spent your career, and you know I always start with my why, okay?
Yes.
I like to get into the why. So you've spent your career helping companies tell their stories, right? In many ways, that's what the exchanges do on the day of an IPO. And you've done that across the venture capital ecosystem as well. So why is storytelling your life's work?
You know, storytelling is for sure my why. I think it started from even just being a young kid liking to tell stories, but also my parents sent me to this really crunchy anthroposophical granola school that I went K through 10th grade. I feel like it made me just super creative in an out-of-the-box way that not a lot of people are. I feel like, especially
your creativity
in the
is different levels.
I mean, you've had some incredibly creative people on your show that I deeply admire, but I do think in the corporate world, creativity is in short supply. And I think as I've gone through my career, the thing that saved me was always a creative lens and storytelling. And I think it's the thing that founders have in short supply. It's the thing CEOs struggle with. And it's a strange thing to hear people struggle about it, but it's harder than it looks. You're hosting this podcast. It's not easy.
No,
I mean, these things are difficult, but I do think my superpower is taking the most complex things and boiling them down into things that are salient and easy to understand, and hopefully a little glamorous.
Ooh, I think that might be one of my superpowers too, which is why we get along. Let's talk for a second about the actual development of the story itself. So let's take a portfolio company as an example, and maybe you can walk me through how you think about the digital footprint, the creative storytelling for a portfolio company from start through the process of owning the entity and then even exiting.
Yeah. I think we could look at a bunch of different startups that I think have done incredible jobs at brand storytelling. I think my best recent example is everything that Eric Lyman and the Ramp team have done with that brand.
Oh, it's amazing.
I think that from not only owning the social media ecosystem, but just in terms of thinking about them and how they came up against Brex, which was a Silicon Valley darling, right? Mm-hmm. And it almost felt like there wasn't room for another. But that whole team, what they did between shipping quickly, but also storytelling and all of the incredible content that they produced helped catapult that brand into the forefront of people's brains. And for me, it's the most acute and obvious example of a challenger brand that was able to, at least in my mind and in most consumers' minds today, leapfrog the Goliath.
It did. Yeah, and the brand definitely helped. But what do you think was unique creatively about it?
They've done a lot of things. One of the things was just that research arm. And
Mm.
now they have these incredible research drops that they put on X and other platforms. And now they're cited by all these other areas. They just find creative ways to move the zeitgeist that is conversation. And as long as you're in that conversation, I think from their partnership with Saquon, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
actually being first to a sports partnership with an enterprise technology company, also making him an angel investor, right? It really did feed into the zeitgeist of Silicon Valley, but also mainstream American culture. It's moments like that. It's things like the RAMP research arm that they developed, where they have all of these research insights being pumped out on X and LinkedIn and all these other places and getting cited by other members of the press and people online. There are so many things that they're doing just from a brand and marketing perspective to stay in the zeitgeist, but also constantly ship new products that make people want to have RAMP.
Right.
I think that that's the magic. It's not just the velocity, it's the fact that they're kind of always shipping.
Yes, agreed. I think one of the things that I find really fascinating as well is the flexibility that they use. They're quick. They'll pivot really quickly if they need to respond to changes in simple things like the algorithm, right? I see them being very fast.
Oh, they're so quick to adapt to whatever is the new thing. I think that's actually one of the things I'm always telling founders. If they can find a way to just think about what is in the zeitgeist of what people are talking about,
Yeah.
and somehow trend jack their way into that, that applies to PR. It applies to social media. It applies to just that whole building in public vernacular. It's like there are all of these different moments where it's not about you, but you can make it about you.
Yeah. That is the best. You just gave the best PR advice you could give an individual because that is 100% correct.
Yeah, that's what good PR is. It's hard. It's so funny whenever I meet a new founder and they're like, how do I get a story told about me? And it's like, well, actually, people don't care about you yet. And so you need to be talking about the things that they're caring about or that the media is onto. And you need to jump on whatever that narrative is and start either posting or posting around it. Finding your way into that zeitgeist is an art.
I agree. At the outset of the conversation, I obviously read a long and embarrassing intro for you, but it's better to hear it in your own words about the journey that you've taken and where you are today. And from there, I have so many other questions for you. So I'd love for listeners to hear from you a little bit more detail about your journey.
Yeah. I started at NASDAQ and I got a job on the PR team doing sustainability PR. That's just so far from what I do today. But what I realized was at that bell ceremony that happens every single day at the exchange, at both exchanges.
Twice a day.
There was no social media. There was no one posting on Twitter at the time. There was nobody posting on Instagram.
And what year was this?
This was 2013 is when I joined the comms team.
Amazing to think how quickly things have changed.
Yeah. And I realized that the Instagram account for NASDAQ was actually taken by some kid named Jack. And it was NASDAQ Jack. And I was like, okay, a 13-year-old has your Instagram account? This is a problem. And so I went to the team at Facebook and I got back the keys to the Instagram. And I literally, because I had to be at every bell ceremony for work, I just started posting, started tagging. All of it, honestly, it just sort of snowballed because as soon as you tag a T-Mobile in a post or a massive company and they reshare it, the follower count
moves.
It moves quickly. I mean, it's the reason that guests are such a mover on podcasts and all of these other things. And so I started literally doing this by hand. And then I realized that the production was a little low and we have a great photographer. How can I get those pro photos like directly to Instagram? And I just started building and upgrading and improving all of these little things that made NASDAQ social media into an actual thing. And I think that that's probably one of the best things about my career is I've always seen these little empty spaces where no one is playing. And I just gravitate towards
Me
them.
too.
You too?
Yes. I love it when there's something that's just, it's not being done or it's not being done quite right and the resources are constrained. And so it's not technically a job, but let's do it because let's make this. I work for an organization. You want to make the whole thing better. But those little holes that you find can become huge careers.
They really can.
Yes.
And I turned that up to the max, right? Built an entire social team, took NASDAQ from 0 followers across all platforms to millions of followers, developed a whole bunch of original programming there. We created a show called Cultural Capital that was like MTV Cribs for office spaces.
I remember that show's great.
And I sent a former Miss USA office to office of all the hottest startups. And I realized that in doing the show that we were actually not being that focused on which were top deals, because a lot of companies that managed to work their way onto the shows never wound up going public. And it wound up being a little bit of a waste. And what the show taught me was like, oh, our listings team maybe isn't thinking about tracking IPOs in the best way.
Right.
And
so you learned something from it.
I learned so much. And I think it's so interesting because each of these little pockets kind of opened up different opportunities within my career of, okay, I learned that I had to do original programming. I start doing original programming. Original programming teaches me something about the sales side of our business that isn't working. And my brain goes, okay, there's another hole here that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And how do I fix that? And honestly, it was venture. And so it was realizing that you can look all day at a book of startups and say, which one of these are going to hit? When the reality is every venture fund knows their top 10, 15 companies. And that's who we should have been targeting with saying, come do this incredible show, because it was a big investment. It's not a small thing to bring a film crew to a startup's headquarters. There is an investment there. And the hope on the NASDAQ side or the New York Stock Exchange side is that there is going to be an ROI on that investment. And so what I did is I built out venture capital partnerships. And I worked with every VC. I sponsored the Forbes Midas list with my friend Alex Conrad and did a whole bunch of things to build relationship with the top cohort of venture capitalists. And then they started to see this machine that I'd built at NASDAQ and seeing that, oh, wow, he can get a lot of views. He does all of these things that move the needle for their portfolio companies. And then all of a sudden I had them coming out of the woodwork being like, hey, would you ever come over to venture? And it wasn't really something I'd ever thought of. NASDAQ was home for me. That place is magical. And
yeah, it's a wonderful firm.
It's a great place to grow up. And I feel like I learned so much from it, but it is one of those things in my career where every time I explored the little white space, it led me to the next thing.
I think that's a good lesson for people, especially young people, because I think all of us think that we can plan and plot every single move. And the reality is a lot of the best opportunities come out of nowhere and were never planned for, envisioned, or imagined. It's just you spot something or someone spots you for an opportunity in a moment.
Yeah, I think that's honestly what happened, right? Redpoint came to me and they were like, hey, we're struggling a little bit on the brand side. Redpoint is one of the most respected firms in the
absolutely.
Valley. They have incredible hits and they just didn't have a brand presence. And that's actually a lot of venture. There's a lot of firms and some of them intentionally so. But I think that they realized that along with a lot of venture in that kind of 21 era was like capital was everywhere. You had firms like Tiger Global chasing every deal that every VC firm did. It was a time period where capital was no longer a differentiator and you kind of needed a shtick or something to hang your hat on, or at least something that people could remember you by.
I think that's a really interesting point because the other thing that happened is that commerce moved from traditional centers of commerce And it started to become more bifurcated around that time and broken down into smaller silos. And you started to see a lot more usage of social media for direct commerce. So if you're a venture capitalist and you want to pitch yourself as the right partner to a great startup, I think being able to provide them with that social handle, that understanding of how to take something and amplify it via social media, it's no longer just a question of, is it branding and am I going to get an ROI on it? It's now commerce. It is direct business. And so you are not only providing capital all of a sudden to the client, but you're also providing them with a branding advantage they can't get somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I think, honestly, it's so funny, but I actually think that the marketing funnel applies to people. Often people think about the funnel of top of funnel awareness and it is literally the same thing for all humans, but specifically in venture capital, where founders are going to talk to you because of your Twitter presence, podcasts you've been on, any kind of appearance that you have made or talk that you've given or report that you've published. That is what draws people into your orbit and takes them down to this place of trust. And at the end of the idea, all that marketing is really doing is building trust. And that's what matters for an investment decision. It's what matters in an enterprise buying decision.
Absolutely.
All of these things are tools to create and build trust. And so I've always felt that people don't view this opportunity accurately. And anytime I meet someone who isn't thinking about building in whatever they're building in public, I kind of go, you're making it so much harder for yourself.
Because first of all, why do you say that? I'm curious why you say that, because I believe that too. And I have so many strong views on it, but I want to hear why you think that.
It's just so much easier. All you have to do is join the conversation and start yapping. And as soon as you're yapping, whether people are attracted to you or maybe they're turned off by you, but either way, you've created a polarity that is important for drawing the right people, or at least the right people for you. To you.
Yeah.
And maybe pushing the others away, which is also good.
Yeah.
I actually think there's a lot of benefits, specifically in venture capital, of being very clear about your value prop and your values, because it helps shape the views of the people who will eventually be your customer.
That's right. I agree. I want to pivot for a second.
Yeah, sure.
You have been the creative marketing behind thousands, right? Thousands
of IPOs.
Thousands of IPOs,
you
right?
name it, I did it.
Like if it's not 100, it's thousands.
Yeah.
Right? What's your favorite? What's the one that stands out for you as a memory?
Oh my gosh, I have so many favorites.
To pick one, it's like you have to pick a child.
I know. A couple of them were during the pandemic that were really incredible because they were harder to do. The one that comes to mind is working with Whitney Wolf Herd and the Bumble team.
That one was so fun.
It was an incredible day. Being able to do a remote Bell and a New York City activation. I think as we talked about marketing ideas, I think the thing that helped me win that IPO was I was like, what if we took the vessel in Hudson Yards, which kind of looks like a honeycomb, and turned it into the Bumble hive for the day.
So cool.
And I had it in the deck as lit up and all these things. It was just those little marketing ideas where maybe you don't have the closeness with someone yet because you know this in the IPO process. Oftentimes, you don't actually have the time to cultivate the relationship for years.
It can come quickly.
Some
of them are very long-term, but some of them can come quickly.
And so when it comes quickly, you actually have to be able to come up with really creative ideas really quickly. And I think that was one of those ones where, for me, I got to work on both the ideation and the creative execution of that, where it was so impactful to that brand. And to see this incredible female entrepreneur who's so young at the time,
I know, it's
going
amazing.
Public, was just an incredible moment in my life, and I hope in hers.
I want to ask you a question. If you're a founder, okay, and you're starting your business for the first time, because I'm working with a lot of women in particular who are in this stage of their lives where they're founding their own businesses. They want the autonomy, they want the freedom, they don't want to have another boss again. These are what they tell me, where a lot of women are feeling this way. Maybe it's just my circle, but it seems to be in the atmosphere. And as they're thinking about starting their businesses, I keep saying to them, but what's your story? How do you get someone who's thinking about a business to crystallize because what I say to them is in 10 years, when you're successful and you've gone public and you sit down to do the interview, and it probably won't be on CNBC, no offense, CNBC, but it'll be on some other distribution platform because of the way the world is moving. When you sit down to do that interview, what are you going to say that's going to resonate with the audience? How do you tackle that with them? How do you help them think through that problem?
Yeah. I mean, this is
your bread and butter.
Every day, right? I'm always talking to founders about how to distill their stories. And I think that actually the most common thing I run into is just something too complicated. They have not made it. And even if they're selling something incredibly technical, that doesn't mean that the end buyer, who is that technical person's boss, is going to understand what that thing is. And so I often just think of how I always ask them, how would you sell or explain this to your 6-year-old? Because it has to be at that level for that marketing message to then rise to the more sophisticated audiences.
Got it.
Because if you don't start simple, it'll never hit. And I think then the other thing you should start doing is having a drumbeat of like, what are the ways that I'm getting this message out? And you know this with the podcast. It's not just you post the podcast. You have to do 50 clips, and you have to do clips on Instagram and clips on TikTok. And
I worry about YouTube shorts and all of it.
Right. And YouTube shorts. And you've got to, on X, you have to quote tweet your own posts several times. There are all these different tricks to these platforms, but it all comes back to the same learning, which is just if you say something once, it's not enough. You have to say it again and again and again and again and again. And that's when marketing messages start to hit, even the simple ones. And so imagine that's complicated. It takes even longer. It's about keeping it simple and then saying it over and over until your consumer or your target consumer gets it.
Yeah. It's so funny because you have to say the same thing so many times that you want to just never say it again. And when you get to that point is probably when maybe it's starting to take off. When you're done talking about something is when you're just starting, is my point.
And then you need to start saying it again, which is crazy.
And again, and again, and again.
I know. It does make you feel like a robot, but that is the entrepreneurial journey, right? You're going to have to tell that story again and again for years. And that story evolves, but hopefully the storyteller evolves as well.
Yes, you want something new to say and a new way to say it as well. Josh, one of the things that I think is really fascinating about you and your career is that when you think about new media and the new digital age of media, venture capital firms are more and more getting into this content creation space. They are more and more thinking about this as a competitive strategy. But you were the first. So how did you come up with this? How did you see around the corner and know that it needed to happen? And how do you think about how it's going to evolve?
Yeah, I guess I was one of the pioneers in this space. And
you technically were.
There were many others. But I do think that what I did that was different was I took a little bit of a classical path of just thinking about creators and the importance of creators in this new media landscape. And I feel like lots of different players in venture right now are trying different things, but they're more centered around themselves than they are around creators. And in my career, from NASDAQ to Redpoint to Lightspeed, it's always been about finding emerging creators and then empowering them to do great work on behalf of the brand.
Yeah.
I did that at the exchange, but when I went to Redpoint, it really hadn't been done in venture, like you said, right? No one had hired a TikToker to be the face of their channel. No one really had a TikTok other than a couple firms that were kind of LARPing onto it, but no one was taking a concerted effort at it. And similarly to Instagram.
Intentional, deliberate,
we
purposeful.
built the most followed venture firm on Instagram. And although that's changed since, it was the moment in 2021 to 23. That was the moment of corporate comedy. We latched onto it. We created this persona. We created Redpoint as a household brand for founders on the internet. And I think that was something really special. And we're doing it again. I hired Claire as, she's both on the investing team and she is a creator. And I think that's really special because there's a difference between hiring a great marketing hire, hiring someone who is on both the investing teams and on the marketing team is something that has never been done in venture capital land before. It's actually never been done in a lot of fields, but
it's not done almost anywhere.
And it's full credit to Ravi and Baishal at Lightspeed who empowered me to make a decision like that together and say, we welcome this bold step of hiring someone who is both. And she built that platform on her own at her other venture firm. And so it is a new world. And my version of this new media landscape is really all about empowering creators to do the best work for the firm. So I've been doing that the better part of my career. And I think it's because if you find great storytellers, you find that they're able to tell your story better than you can tell it yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very excited to see what Claire does at Lightspeed between our Like Work podcast and all the things she's going to do with future founders and that entire brand that she's building as an independent creator on TikTok and Instagram to help bring people into the Lightspeed universe.
I agree. I think it's the way of the future. So talk to me about how you set up your new podcast.
Yes, I would love to.
I'm so excited to hear about it. I know that you just created a studio, right?
I took maybe a room half the size and turned it into the Lightwork podcast studio, which is Lightspeed's new flagship show with Claire Zhao, who's a very famous AI influencer. She has 300,000 followers on Instagram, 100,000 on TikTok, and is just, I think, the voice of a generation in terms of
she is
learning about AI. And it's her and I every week. And we have 2 or 3 stories that were the big moving news stories of the week in AI. And we just try and make them understandable for more of a general audience, people who are VC interested or are founders. All of those folks is kind of the target, and anyone kind of tech curious. Mm-hmm. So we started about a month ago, which has been really fun. And it's just been a joy to build the podcast studio, like I mentioned. One of my other superpowers as a marketer is I feel like people put marketing polish at a mid-level and think that they call it a day. And I just am like, want to put like 5 more layers of nail polish on that before I'm like done with it looking beautiful.
I know. I love your work. There's a reason why I love it. So it's perfectionism.
It's perfectionism to an insane degree. I actually think it's akin to the hospitality world, right? It being that level where you're like, oh yeah, I know how this hotel smells and looks and feels, and I want that experience. Mm-hmm. And so in building the studio, it was really a labor of love of being like, how do I translate this venture brand into something that consumers will hopefully love? And the idea is Lightspeed is invested in some of the biggest AI companies that everyone knows, from Anthropic to Mistral, Skilled AI and Robotics, Granola, the note-taking app that everybody uses. We're in all of these amazing companies. And I like to translate things into moments of nostalgia. And so for me, it was like, okay, if Lightspeed was a time period in history, it would really be this like 60s moon landing, moonshot moment. And so how do I bring that to life and kind of date back all these modern things from security companies like Rubrik and Wiz and just bring them back as if they were like somehow little totems from the 60s.
That's so cool. And I want to see the studio.
You have to come by. I would love to have you by it. It's really beautiful. Our set designer did an amazing job of like finding these little moments. And it's actually something I've done for years, from NASDAQ building sets for IPOs out in Times Square to building spaces at Davos to building our Lightspeed space at Davos where we welcome founders. This experiential marketing and bringing people to a place and making them feel the experience has always been such a joy for me that I get so much out of it.
Yeah, and you're so good at it. It's so natural for you to just bring people together and to be creative and to have that vision. I am curious. I want to get a couple of your thoughts on podcasts for a second. So One of them is, I'm curious what tools you use in your podcasting process. I'm curious about AI and how you're leveraging that in your creative processes as well. So could you spend a little bit of time on that?
Would love to. So we film in a room like this with cameras, but we also stream it on Riverside because a lot of the times we have remote guests. And I feel like Riverside is my favorite tool.
That's the one I use too.
Everybody uses it, but it's so good. And they're adding all of these AI tools that are making it way, way better.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of the research brief, I use Claude for everything now.
Mm-hmm.
But because I have Claude connected to all these different connectors, including Exa for that agentic search that just makes it a little bit better.
Yep.
Claire and I have very strong opinions about what the big stories of the week are.
Right.
But I have this Claude skill that goes and makes every week for me, these are the big news stories in AI. And then it's a little bit of a debate. Do we include this one?
Right.
Is this a big enough story?
Right.
But it having all those connectors to Slack and to Exa and to Gmail and all these other places.
That's the context that it's
it gives
giving
it the
AI.
context that knows, oh yeah, we like this kind of story. We don't like that kind of story. Or this story is going to be a little too in the weeds for our audience. Or maybe it's not technical enough because our audience is smart and they like smart things. So it's been really helpful as a companion in developing this show that I actually, after 20 years in marketing, making shows, making podcasts, I've never had that kind of an ally in show development.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really fun. And so I think those are like the two things that are game changing.
I have to agree. If people understood the extent to which we've automated our back end and our front end with AI, I just need to show up at interviews.
Right? And
yeah.
I mean,
and then, of course, obviously, I'm a perfectionist, so there's nothing I'm not going to look at, be really careful about.
Of course, you're doing
your
research.
So automated. I have so much built in AI that I joke with my husband all the time. I'm like, don't shut down the computer. The team is working.
I know, right?
The team is
busy.
busy.
Is always working.
Yes.
I've actually gotten to the point where Claire's amazing, and I'm like, how do I keep up with this superhero of tech journalism?
The AI world.
Right? And I'm playing lines back and forth with Claude on voice chat now.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's so many fun things that make being a creator so much easier with AI.
I feel like AI has made the creator space so much more fun so fast.
So much more fun.
Yeah.
But it does make slop everywhere, right? So because there's such an ability to create, I feel like there's tons of content, which is why as we talk about the podcast studio that I built and taste, that the taste bar has gone from, okay, we can have a decent podcast to it needs to look like professionally produced television. That is the bar now.
I agree. We've done that from day one in our show.
Yes.
Against everyone's advice. Everyone said to us, just do remote, do Riverside. It's impossible to book the guests in person.
Who's going to listen or watch that?
I said, no one wants that. We want people in studio as much as possible. I want to look you in the eye. And that's what people want to see. They want that authenticity. They don't want slop. But to your point, the AI makes a lot of the processing part of it easier. The taste is still your number one thing.
It's your only differentiator left in this world of AI, right? The only thing left is taste. I'm always thinking about how can I, if I've used AI in some way, how can I put my taste bar on top of that as a layer to make it even better? Because everybody else is putting out stuff and there's so much of it on the internet today.
Yeah.
It is a really special thing. And I applaud you for doing it as much in person as possible, because I feel like if you're asking someone for their time, and we're all so busy.
Yeah.
At least give them the gift of excellent audio production where they can listen to it on the subway and hear it cleanly. Or if they're sitting at home and their couch and they're putting on YouTube and watching it, that it's a good watch and that it's a good experience. Because I feel like we do all this work. Don't let the subscribers walk out the door because the production wasn't up to snuff.
Totally. Or the sound is off a little bit, which has happened to me. I mean, there's small things that have happened in the past, but
The devil is in the details in podcasting. In everything
But to
in
your
marketing,
point-
but really in podcasting.
But to your point, though, the bar now, it is about taste and the degree of the conversation and the guests. because a lot of the other elements of it can be relatively easily automated. But if you do curate the right guests and you do get the right audience, the engagement in the community is incredible.
Yeah. I also think it's always good to look at history as you're developing a product like this and be like, what are old things that worked that I can bring back? So I'll give you an example. On our Lightwork show, every week or every other week, we'll have an investor on who's super smart on a very heady topic.
Yep.
And we have a whiteboard that, of course, I've Lightworkified, and it's retro looking and chic. And we have them whiteboard, what is a data center? How are AI data centers different than the data centers of yore? Are they drinking your water? All these fun things.
To make it digestible.
And it's back to that original thing of how do you simplify complex topics?
Yes.
And the whiteboard, it just brings you back to a classroom in high school or college. And you're like, oh yeah, there was this thing that makes things really easy. And so we've brought that little classroom thing. And I actually think it also kind of resonates with Lightspeed as a team and a firm. Is we're kind of the firm that's a little nerdy, a little smarter than everybody else, but at the same time, not a little wallflowerish. We are getting people out of their own way, out of their heads, and onto the whiteboard and onto Lightwork. And it's really working. I feel like some of our recent clips on Instagram have taken off because people are like, oh yeah, I want to learn this complex topic and I want this really smart investor to teach me it.
And to do it in a way where I can understand it, which is the critical point. I'm working on that on the show. As we continue along and we move into season 2, I'm working very much on simplification because I love the complex topics, but I want to make sure that I don't lose my audience along the way because they tune out and say, well, there were 3 acronyms used in the last sentence that I don't know. Or the worst thing is them to say, this went over my head. And it's like, if that went over your head, well, maybe it went over other people's heads. And I didn't do my job if it goes over their heads.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to continue to work on too. Because I think that you want to reach more people. That's the goal. Entertain more people, educate more people. Now, let me ask you this. How do you measure success?
For Lightspeed or just for the pod?
Well, let's do the pod and then Lightspeed, I know, right? Because it's the return. But I think in marketing in general, how do you measure success? The pod, and then also when you think about social media, the metrics people are using, they're changing. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for us, it's about awareness, right? We're also having guests from our portfolio companies frequently on the show. The goal of the show is twofold. One is obviously to grow an audience where hopefully we get an audience of future founders who want to start companies, thinking about Lightspeed as one of the top venture firms in Silicon Valley that should be as part of their decision set and hopefully
the door they want to knock on.
The door they want to knock on. It should also be this opportunity for our portfolio companies to come on and tell their stories. Mm-hmm. As we all know, traditional media has taken a really hard hit. Yeah. There are layoffs every week at every major publication. Mm-hmm. There are fewer and fewer tech journalists who can tell your story. And so if you aren't a big name yet, or you haven't raised a ton of money, there aren't a lot of places to tell your story.
Right.
Being able to say, we've got a place you can tell your story where we're going to let you explain it and we're going to do our best to make it as digestible as possible
and
to
amplify
our audience
it.
And amplify it. That's the value. It's really awareness and brand awareness. But at the end of the day, I think it's mostly about how can we attract that next generation of future founders? Because the ones that come on the show, yes, they're going to get a bunch of viewers and hopefully customers out of that opportunity, but they've already made the decision to partner with Lightspeed.
Right, right. That all makes total sense to me. One book you've recommended is Designing Your Life, which argues that meaningful careers are designed through curiosity and experimentation rather than discovered, which I agree with, by the way. First, I'll explain that philosophy for us in a little more detail, and then let's talk a little bit about how it shaped your career.
I love that book. A life coach, when I was early on in my career at NASDAQ, gave it to me and was like, you need to do this book. And I was like, okay, whatever. I read the book. I did the whole thing.
Did you think it was like a self-help book that you had no interest in?
I felt like it was like a self-help thing.
Yeah. I have no interest in self-help books.
Same. And this is not that. This is like very much being like, you can be either in the driver's seat of your life or you can be in the passenger seat of your life. And I talk to so many people where they're like, oh, yeah, and then this happened to me. And I'm like, so that's how you got from your first job to your second job? Something happened to you. You didn't happen to it. And that is what designing your life did for me in my career. I did it when I was 25. I did it when I was 30. I did it when I was 35. I'm going to continue to do it for years and years because it asks you to step back and say, okay, at this current juncture, wherever you are, what are the paths your life could go? Personal, career, all of them. And you chart them out. And it's not because they're gonna be true. I mean, if I go back and read some of my old ones, I'm like, you thought you were gonna do that? You were never gonna do that. But what they do is they create these invisible red threads of intentionality that I think for me, and I didn't even have joining a VC firm on there. It was more about my career at NASDAQ and growing as a professional.
Yeah.
But I do feel like that book led me to all of the moments in my career path that took me upward. And I also think in my personal life, it helped me kind of solidify what I was looking for, what I would say yes to, what was unacceptable to me. I just think it's a really powerful book. And I wish more people would read it. I've actually done it with friends. I've done it with team members. I just think it's one of those things where if you ever feel like you're not in the director's seat of your life, it's a great way to take a step back and be in it.
You know, an interesting thing we could do would be to have a community, a small subset of our communities, read the book and come together and map out their lives together.
Oh my God, I would love to do that.
It would be an amazing event and people would enjoy it. And then they'd have the opportunity to share ideas because ultimately when you're doing that exercise, your imagination is the limit.
Oh, for sure. I think that's what the power of these kinds of exercises. It's just about uncovering you to you, because we're complicated. If we talked about how messaging is complicated and you need to make that simple, the way people talk to themselves, I feel like I sometimes meet people, I'm like, do you know you?
Right. Okay, Josh, I have to take you through a lightning round
Oh,
before
okay.
we wrap. You
Lightning
ready?
round away, yes.
You ready? Okay. The first word you associate with leadership.
Empathy.
Agreed. The most underrated marketing channel.
Still TikTok. I still think there's a huge opportunity on TikTok.
Interesting. I thought you might say YouTube, but maybe that's overrated.
No, it's an amazing channel. I just think there's so much saturation. And
Yeah.
I still think there's always room in every area, but TikTok still has a lot of room to grow.
I agree with that. A startup brand you wish you had built.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Airbnb.
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like working on that IPO was one of the most fun things, and Chesky and that entire team is so smart. He almost gives me modern day Jobs vibes.
Cool. One book every entrepreneur should read. Is it Designing Your Life?
I mean, it kind of has to be.
Okay,
after
that makes sense, right? We should take it full circle. The most overrated startup advice.
It's actually what I told you. It's build in public, because people will tell you that, but if it's not authentic to you or you can't do that, it's not where you should spend your time.
It doesn't
So
work.
it's like you hear people constantly telling people to build in public, but you have to want to be in the discourse. And if you don't want to be in the discourse, you can find other lanes that are
Right.
your lane, but you got to find a lane.
Right. I agree with that. That's very astute. The most valuable personal habit you have.
I've been working on this, but I feel like just cooking dinner with my husband and putting the phone in the drawer and not having my phone accessible during dinner, during cooking,
Prep
all
and-
of it has been a game changer for me. Just having those moments of partnership where we don't have as busy executives, as busy humans, these devices are stealing our lives and if this whole conversation is about how you grab attention, you need to be able to figure out how to
Turn it
take
off.
your own
Yeah.
and be in control of your own attention. And so it's something I work on every day, but I found that has been my best hack for just being like, okay, all those things will still be there. You can put it away. Ariana Huffington once told me that she has her phone in the next room, and I was when she sleeps. I'm like, I don't know that I believe that, but dinner I can do.
I kind of think she might.
She might.
But I agree with you. Dinner, that's a good habit and one I think I'm going to take and put into practice. So thank you for that. A founder whose storytelling you admire most.
Oh, wow. We have so many in our portfolio. Shiv Rao from Abridge. He's an amazing storyteller, an amazing communicator.
Oh, I have to dial into him. I'm not aware of his work.
He is incredible, and I feel like you should definitely have him on the show. He's one of the most eloquent speakers I've met who is also a genius.
Okay, let's do it. I love that. And then complete this sentence. This is your last one. The companies that will define the next decade are the ones that...
The companies that define the next decade are the ones that don't rely on distribution. Because I think it's more, distribution is now a table stakes thing in this AI era, right? Everybody can get distribution really, really quickly.
And cheaply.
And I think it's going to be that layer of product excellence that makes everyone's workflow better. And it probably has that level of polish that all the other products that are competing against them do not have.
Josh, I loved our conversation about storytelling. You are an expert. You're a master at it. Thank you so much for joining us on Straight to Why.
Thank you for having me, Amanda.